Welcome to Smart Software with Smart Logic, a podcast where we talk about best practices in web and mobile software development with a focus on new and emerging technologies. My name is Justice Ethan, and I'll be your host today. I'm a full-stack developer at Smart Logic, a Baltimore-based consulting company that has been building web and mobile software apps since 2005. From the Smart Logic team today, I have co-host our resident Elixir wizard, Eric Ostrich. Really glad to have him. Say hi, Eric.
Hey, everybody.
Awesome. And as you might know, if you've been listening, our first series here covers Phoenix and Elixir in production. And today we're joined by a well-known Elixir developer, one of the hosts of the famous Elixir Mix podcast, Mark Ericksen. Say hi, Mark.
Hey, friends.
Awesome. So Mark is a pro at this podcasting thing. Mark, to start out, could you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background, and how you got started with Phoenix and Elixir?
Sure. Yeah. I have been doing development for a long time, software development in general. And then it was around 2006, I was doing C# development. And then 2008-ish, I learned about Ruby on Rails. And doing C# web development before they even had MVC framework, it was using Webforms. It was terrible. It was a terrible experience. And then when I learned, I come to Rails and it's like, wow, this is how it should be. This is how web development should be. And I fell in love with it. I moved across the country just to have opportunities to work with that technology, even without having a job lined up, just because I knew the market I wanted to be in. And then I've done Rails for a long time. And then through the kind of Ruby on Rails community, there's Dave Thomas wrote a book. He's written a lot of Ruby books. He's started writing Elixir books. And I respect his opinions. So I started looking into Elixir. And then I fell in love with Elixir with the same amount of kind of excitement that I had with Rails. And it's like, wow, this is how it should be. I'm having so much fun again. It's like the most fun I've had in programming, in doing Elixir since I first kind of found Rails. And so I've been doing Elixir ever since, and making job choices and things just to make sure I could work with the technology that I really cared about. That I felt it wasn't so much oh, I want to work with the new shiny. It's I felt I was a better developer with these tools. And so that's why I wanted to work with Elixir. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, I can definitely concur with feeling like a better developer in Elixir. Now that we have an intro out of the way, could you give us a quick overview of the Elixir projects that you have in production?
Sure. Yeah. So I came to the current company that I'm at. I started here in June. So they already had some existing Elixir and Rails software. Prior to that, I was with a separate company in the fintech space. It was a startup. And that was a place where I was the lead software architect for their backend Elixir system. And that was really where I got to kind of build from the ground up, and had a lot of fun doing that. So I've had experience kind of on both sides, right? So the system I built previously, it was an umbrella with 2 Phoenix apps in it. One was an admin-facing Phoenix app, but everything was really in that umbrella. And then since June, I've been with this other company now, and we have about 8 or 9 services, and 2 of them are Rails, and one's a monolith. And then we have 1, 2, 3, a number of other Elixir ones, or there were Rails projects that have been converted to Elixir. So it's and so I've kind of been introducing, okay, well, we can bring some of these together as an umbrella to kind of improve some of the inter-app communication and organization. So we're doing that. But yeah, so but that's kind of what I have in production, right? It's I've got the Rails, you can kind of call it, or the Elixir kind of monolith I kind of call it a micro-lith. The idea of the small applications inside of an umbrella. And then there's the multiple services coordinating together. So I've done both, and currently working with the multiple services one.
So is there any particular reason why you picked Elixir to use in production?
Yeah. Well, once I kind of first found Elixir, I fell in love with. So at first, trying to just get my head around pattern matching was a
Mm.
little bit difficult. It's like, this is telling me no match, and I don't even know what that means, when I'm trying to do like an assignment or something.
Mm.
So once I kind of got past that, then it was the OTP concepts, just that I have these fundamentals, these primitives built into the beam that are incredibly powerful. And just like I have supervisors, and I can have supervision trees, and I can have named processes that I can find and send messages to, and they can do work for me, and it's all concurrent and parallel. And so that was really why I started wanting to have Elixir in production. Is just all these, so much, it comes with so much powerful stuff out of the box.
This is a really common thread we hear from people. The coming from the Ruby and Rails background, where syntax is king, and the first challenge being understanding pattern matching. And then once you understand pattern matching, you having this like incredible weapon at your disposal. And then, I mean, you laid it out perfectly, because the easy concurrency primitives. This is like the recurring thread every single time we hear from people. They get stoked about the pattern matching, and then they get stoked about the standard library. And it's exciting to see that commonality for me.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot too, and I think that's a testament to just kind of what the Erlang community has already built up, and the how solid it really is as a technology and a foundation, that we can just take Elixir and the work of more modern language kind of syntax, put on top of it, and some other modern helpers like macros, to really have a powerful system. And that has a lot of that. What was considered valuable from Rails was that developer happiness and developer friendliness. But then it takes that, and it's like the grown-up version, where it's like, but I don't fall down, and if I do fall down, I get back up. I'm supervised. I got it. It's solid.
Do you think that coming from Rails to Elixir, you get a similar sort of community vibe, where everybody's very helpful and newbie friendly, that you maybe didn't get in the C# world?
Well, it's true. The C# world was very commercial. It was very like business oriented. Like when you go to a meetup, like .NET, like this is in the early days, right? When I was going to some of these meetups, I was wanting to kind of get into this tech. It was like recruiting is what it was there about, and it was just all business. It was like, these people aren't here for fun. They're like networking. And then you go to a Rails or like early days Ruby meetups, and it was like, hey, we're just playing with this awesome tech that we're having fun with, and we're not even doing it with our job yet. We're just doing it because we care about it.
Yeah, and that feels like a lot of the Elixir meetups I've been to, where it's like, how many of you are doing this in like professionally, and like 2 out of the 10 hands will go up.
I know, it's true. And so I do run a Utah Elixir meetup. And so I do see that a lot. And there's a lot of people who are coming. We have people who are current students, like going to university. We have people who are actually, working and, professionally, and they're not using Elixir yet, and people who are. But there's a lot of interest, and people are coming just because it's fun and it's a community. And I think that I'm glad to see that the Elixir community has borrowed and kind of built on that pattern from the Ruby community. I think that's a good pattern to have.
Cool. So we've heard a bit about the advantages of Elixir, but we should touch on maybe a brief bit of disadvantages. So have you seen any, I guess, during your usage of Elixir?
I think the biggest one that I've seen is when I started doing building releases, and then just doing the configuration management around releases. And then that's been a topic in the community for a while. It's a recognized problem, and it's not unsolvable. I have it solved, but like kind of figuring that out, and like can be a little clumsy. So I'm looking forward to when we have a really good solution around that. Just recently I saw, like with the release of Elixir 1.8, Jose was announcing, hey, this is some of the stuff, the main new feature we're working on for 1.9. And he was talking about how they want to be able to have a mix release as a full part of the language feature, not like an external, third-party library. So I'm really optimistic that this can be something we solve elegantly. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we do that. But currently, that's the pain point I have.
Yeah, I run an open source project that I actually showed at Utah Elixir. But every now and then someone will pop in and say, hey, like I want to turn this on for production. I was like, well, this is like, you have to become a full-time Elixir developer. Like, that's just, sorry, but we're getting there.
Yep.
So
that's true.
Definitely the big pain point right now. So.
So maybe we can segue from some of the discussion about these pain points to some of the hosting environment questions, Eric.
Yeah. So I guess the first big one is, where do you put these Elixir apps in production?
So we are running on AWS, and since I came to this company in June, my focus has been moving to Kubernetes. And so previously, these are just being deployed to Amazon EC2 instances, and so now we're moving to I'm happy to say next week we're going to be rolling out the production Kubernetes deployment, and it's been a long time coming, getting everything set up.
Cool.
But yeah, so we're using Amazon EKS for that.
Cool. So we're getting super fresh news.
That's right.
Cool. So it's Kubernetes. So you're obviously using Docker. What else are you doing besides Docker? Is it distillery? How are you getting those on Kubernetes, etc.?
Yeah. So it is Docker and distillery 2.0, using releases there, and then just using YAML files for creating the deployments, and then a series of kind of bash scripts for saying, hey, now I want to roll out this version, just modify the version and roll that out. And, so the build, it's like a build script too, I followed the distillery pattern where he said, this is Bitwalker, Paul Schoenfelder, who runs that project. And he set up a pattern using make files. And so I've just kind of continued with that.
Make files.
I know. They're kind of archaic because they have to be tab delimited, or tab indented. And it's because it doesn't work without that. And I couldn't tell. My editor doesn't care about tabs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But once I got that figured out, it's using make files to build and push to the ECR, the Elastic Container Registry, whatever it is called on AWS. Yep. So, and then it is my intention, as part of this whole deployment and moving to Kubernetes, is that we will have a continuous integration, continuous deployment. So I currently, my plan is to use that using GitLab, like an internally hosted GitLab that will do as merges happen, and then we can auto deploy to Kubernetes there. So that's my goal.
Cool. So I know a tiny bit about the Kubernetes world. Are you using Helm or Ksonnet? I don't know if they do the same thing. I know their words.
Yes. So Helm is really helpful. Helm is a project, and you create or use files called charts. And a chart is really, so if I wanted to deploy a service to Kubernetes, there's a series of YAML files that I would have to create. One defines the deployment itself, which talks about the environment variables and how the secrets are given to the container and all of that. And then another file would say, this is how my service is exposed so that I can talk to it from outside or within the cluster. And then I might have an ingress that says, this is how things from outside of the cluster can talk to this service. So you have these series of YAML files, and a chart lets you wrap all of those up together into like a zip file kind of thing, and it's like a templating building convenience. I haven't started using those yet. I'm starting to get to the point where that would be helpful, but
Cool.
So far I haven't needed it yet. But I have used Helm and charts for installing other services into my Kubernetes, like Prometheus or Grafana, things like that.
Cool. So when you do a deploy, are you able to get zero downtime when you do the deploy?
Yes, and that is a really convenient benefit of Kubernetes, where I can just say deploy this, and in the configuration of the YAML file, I say I want it to be a rolling update, and so it will say, all right, well, you can configure it all, but by default, I'm going to say I want create one new instance. Once that's up, take down the old one, and then roll out to the next one and the next one. So like say I've got 3 instances of my application running. It'll just kind of roll them out one at a time and wait for it to come up and be solid and, health checks kind of thing. And then it goes on to the next one. So yes, it's Kubernetes makes that part easy.
So I guess our next question is, are you able to do any clustering inside of Kubernetes?
Yes. So I mentioned we have like 8 or so services, and 2 of them, 2 of the Elixir ones are clustered. Most of the other ones they're really kind of following more of that microservice kind of architecture, and where they're just talking through REST web calls. But what I do like is that libcluster, also by Paul Schoenfelder, Bitwalker, same person as Distillery. You can kind of get a vibe here, right? He's had to solve some of these problems, and so he's done a really good job with libcluster. There's a different strategies that they provide, and there's a cluster strategy for Kubernetes, and so I'm using that one. So what that does, the way it works, just kind of the overview, is it allows your deployment to Kubernetes to query Kubernetes itself and say, hey, where are the other applications that are named this? And like you can look up, query by label. And so when it finds them, it just says, okay, here are all the other applications that have the same label. That's your application that you want to be clustered, and then it just hooks it up, and I don't have to worry about it. So that makes it really easy. Love it.
Yeah, I've looked a tiny bit into the Kubernetes clustering stuff, but the rest of Kubernetes has scared me away, so I never got to that point.
I understand. Like the way I got into it was there was a Humble Bundle. They have like games that you can buy, like a pack of games or something. They also do books, and they had a DevOps Humble Bundle. And so I was able to buy a whole bunch of books, and some of them were Kubernetes, and so I was like, I started going through those books and started spending my time doing that, and that's kind of how I got there. But yeah, it's daunting if you don't have a guide, like either a book or some kind of tutorial or something to kind of walk you through it.
Yeah, I played briefly around in early Kubernetes, and then maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, then stopped using it for like 6 months. And then when I look back at it, it was all different. And yeah, so that's where I'm currently at. Like I know a little bit of what it is, and it's all changed.
Yeah. The other thing that kind of is funny is like when you're doing all of your working out Kubernetes locally, you're usually doing something like Minikube, where it runs like a kind of mini cluster in a VM on your machine. And that, when you then say, okay, I've got it, I figured it out, I can make this all work, and then you go and try and do it on production, it's like, oh, now you have to know how to talk, like especially in AWS, right? Now you have to kind of take into account IAM roles and things that are AWS specific, and how do I get the Amazon application load balancers to talk to my Kubernetes cluster? So and that'll be different with if you're going to Azure or DigitalOcean. It's like it's just kind of that boundary problem.
Yeah, I was doing it on the Google Cloud.
Yeah,
at that point, but cool. So how do these new Elixir apps that you've got compare to? It sounded like you replaced at least one of your old Ruby apps. Like how do they compare?
Yeah. So one example, I guess, is just thinking about resources. Our load is not, the traffic load is not so high that we're concerned about, we're not like at a Twitter scale or anything like that where we really care about that much. But it's like putting a Rails application with Passenger and Nginx into a container and just getting 4 instances of this Ruby app running, it's like 750 megabytes of RAM. And that's just allowing me to do 4 parallel requests. And it's like, that's insane, right? Compared to what I can do with Elixir. And so I can run an Elixir application in a container. And, this is a sizable Elixir application, and I'm running about 100 megabytes of RAM, and it's concurrent up to, some unbounded set of, concurrent requests that I can handle. So
it's essentially how many ports can you open?
Right. Yeah. And at some point you do run out of, like, either they're doing so much work, so it's CPU bound, or you're doing so many requests that you're like flooding your network traffic or something. But yeah, so I don't have to worry about how many requests I can handle when I'm running Phoenix and Elixir. At least at the scale that we're at right now, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. We're on. We have an app on Heroku, and we did, this was one of our first actually production servers. And so we're like, well, what do we need for dyno size? I don't know. Pick a 2x.
Right.
That's usually a safe bet. And then this thing has been running at that 100 megabytes. So the only reason we have it is that second CPU core.
Yeah. And yeah, cause I don't know, it's been a while since I've used Heroku, but you have to go to some certain level just so they don't shut it off.
Yeah. Yep.
The free tier, they'd kill it after inactivity or something.
So maybe we should move on here, talking a little bit about background task processing. Is that about right, Eric?
Yep.
Very good. How are you doing that, Eric? Mark Ericksen.
Yeah. So with background jobs, every project I've worked on, at some point you have to deal with that. Either you're wanting to send out an email asynchronously or something, and a lot of times I've just liked writing in them myself, because with the primitives that are built into the beam, assuming you're clustered, then you can have, you can just, create a gen server that's named and kind of coordinate with the other nodes to say, all right, I'm the guy running the background jobs or whatever it is. And then it just becomes really easy. There are some off-the-shelf tools also that we have in production. There's one called EXQ, and
yeah, we've used that one too.
Yeah, and that has been very helpful for us, because we also have these Ruby applications, and so there's this API compatibility. So you could put a job in on the Ruby side and have it processed and fulfilled on the Elixir side. So that makes it easy. And another one is Quantum. And so Quantum is nice because it kind of lets you can use a cron-like syntax to say, I want to run these jobs at this time. So that's a handy one too that I've used.
Cool. So I guess continuing with the theme of libraries, what other ones have you used in these applications?
So Phoenix, obviously, they're web applications, and we were using Ecto 3 for sending out emails. We're using a project called Bamboo, and that makes it. What's nice about that is it gives you a struct for being able to validate that the email content is going to have what you want, like the correct recipients and the body and everything. And it makes that easy for tests. Speaking of tests, there's Ex Machina. I use that a lot. I don't know of a better one. It's great. It comes back from the Rails factory girl type of. It's like a factory for creating test data and inserting it into your database or not. Just building it in memory. I use that on every project. Love it. And then, Eric, when I met you at the ElixirConf, you introduced me to Prometheus EX. And because it was great. Sidebar, right, I think that's the value of going to actual in-person places where you meet people. So I just made the effort. It's all right, I just want to meet people. So every time we'd break, I'd go sit at a different table and just meet people. And that's where I met Eric, and he introduced me to Prometheus EX. And and he showed me how it works. And because of his awesome project, X Venture, I was able to actually see examples of how to use it because reading the docs was not necessarily clear.
And I guess I have to pop in here. It might be anachronistic by the time this comes out, but pretty shortly, Eric will be introducing a lot of people to Prometheus at Lone Star. Are you going to be there, Mark?
No, I won't be able to make Lone Star this year, but
bummer.
Maybe if you're going to I'm hoping to make it to the Elixir conference in Denver or outside of Denver.
Aurora,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be there.
We should be there. Eric will be there speaking. I bet.
Got to be accepted in the CFP first.
Yeah. Great.
And so in terms of just kind of finishing out the libraries, so I already mentioned EXQ, and you guys are familiar with that. Another one is Suite XML. Some of the external services like partner organizations deal in XML. So we have to parse that, and that works well for that. Absinthe is the last one, and that is the Elixir GraphQL implementation. That's kind of the default. Like if you want to do GraphQL, you probably start with Absinthe. And I really love that. That is I much prefer that over writing REST APIs anymore. So that's my favorite.
Cool. So going from libraries to third-party services, have you struggled integrating any?
A lot of the big like professional ones, you don't really have a problem with because there's a lot of good documentation, like using Stripe or talking to AWS for S3. There's I think it's EX AWS, or there's various AWS libraries that already exist for doing some of those things. The ones that I've had the biggest issue with are like the custom partner ones. Like I had to, with the fintech company that I was with, one of the things we had to do was our partner organization was a bank, and banks are not known for being super tech leading edge, right? And this company was like given credit, I guess, for being much more tech savvy than our first partner. They were terrible. I won't name them by name, but they were terrible. I mean, it was the worst thing. Like literally, we're having to FTP files and pull FTP folders. It was terrible, and having to literally use Java applications to write XML file or Excel files, spreadsheets. It was awful. Wow. So anyway, this new modern bank partner, they had VB.NET and they had a SOAP API. And that was just, it's inconsistent on every different request. And that's where I've spent a lot of the time. It's just like, it's the external partners. They aren't big. They're not investing in making their service easy to use for other developers. That's not my focus.
Well, I'm sure we could spend a lot of time talking about SOAP APIs and how bad they are.
You guys deal with that too?
Yeah, but we do have limited time, and Eric, we've got some closeout questions here if you want to start with that punch list.
Sure. So I guess our first one is, do you have any story where Elixir saved the day in production?
Yeah, so there is one that comes to mind. It was basically a lot of the focus of this primary application that I work with it's an applicant tracking system. So you have people who are applying to like the tenant space, they're applying to an apartment or something like that. And as part of this whole process, we're doing background checks, and that's kind of the space that we're in. And the main applicant tracking page is kind of like the home page for the property managers who are kind of seeing who all has been applying. And that was a very heavy, so it's served by Rails, and it was a very heavy page in terms of the size of the JSON download, because there's a Vue.js front end, and the size of the download of all the data that was coming down, and all of the data it took to build this set of data, right? Because you have like a list of an applicant and then an applicant, and they invited roommates. So like you have multiple roommates, and each one of those has a different application status and background check status. And so you have all these different, so like for one applicant or one application, it kind of goes down, like it kind of fans out into all these different related things that you're fetching. And so we had all these things in the Rails app to try and make that work. So, we have Redis caches, we have in database denormalized, caches, all this stuff to just try and so this is not a terrible page to be on because it's like the main page. And, so it really kind of depends on each individual company, like how many applications they would have. But we have one of our clients has 10,000 properties that they manage. And so there's a lot. And so thankfully it's kind of broken out, so it's not all in one. But that was the nature of this problem, right? And so when we experimented with how can we do this differently with Elixir, so this was still the Vue front end, talking to a GraphQL backend, and using the data loader library that's part of the Absinthe project. And what that let us do is it basically does one query for the applicants, and then using data loader, it's able to fetch out all the different related tables. But it's able to do that in parallel, and then it pulls all the data back together. And so I don't even have to worry about how it does that. And so that was awesome. And then the other aspect of it was because it's GraphQL, we could say, well, previously we were having this large JSON body come down that we were saving into view stores, so we could move around between pages. And we realized we don't need to do that. We can just say, well, what is the data I need for this page? And just fetch it all in one document. And it literally went 10 times faster, from over 3 seconds per page load to 300 milliseconds. It was literally 10 times faster. And then the JSON download literally got 10 times smaller. And so it's like all the other efforts that we'd made to optimize and make it work, we actually we were able to remove all of that. It's like that was Elixir. That was the benefit of these mature libraries like Absinthe and Data Loader, which are all doing, is taking advantage of everything that's in Elixir and the Beam runtime to be concurrent and automatically parallelizing work where it can be done. And that was it. That was a huge win for me. And it's just you get all kinds of buy-in when you get something like that. We're all of a sudden we deployed it and everything's literally faster, noticeably an improvement.
Now, did you take a screenshot of some chart somewhere that showed really high graph and then just a huge dip?
I would have if I'd already met you and you'd show me something. I didn't have that.
So, are you using any cool OTP features?
Well, like I kind of described before, we have these multiple services, and there are a lot of them are just kind of like Phoenix apps. So there's all the communication between them is HTTP calls. So there's really nothing impressive or really fun going on there. But I actually kind of view that as a testament to you don't have to worry about that. You can be insanely productive and not have to understand any of that because of what Phoenix gives you. Phoenix automatically creates a process per request. So you're automatically concurrent and running in parallel. And then Ecto has connection pooling, and it's automatically going to buy you a lot. So you can go really far without doing any of that. But I have worked on other projects at the fintech company where there was a lot more that was OTP specific, where we have Gen servers that are managing work queues, and then you have using Gen Stage to have a set number of workers because we have this partner bank and we don't want to flood them with requests when we're doing a background job or something. So we're kind of throttling ourselves. So that kind of stuff, it just makes it easy. So yeah.
All right. And our last question here is if you could give one tip to developers out there who may or already have Elixir in production, what would it be?
I think kind of following on with that last one is just have fun with it, right? And just enjoy it. Don't stress. I've talked to a lot of people who kind of get frozen up about worrying about doing it the right way. Because when you go into all the forums and kind of see what people are talking about, they're saying, oh, well, you should do it with contexts, or you should do it with umbrellas, or you should do it this way. This is the right way. And it's and people kind of get frozen where they don't move. It's don't worry about that. One of the nice things about Elixir is if you're just kind of worrying about modules and functions and you're trying to just kind of create intelligent code that's just you're just designing it well, then refactoring it is not that bad. It is not like refactoring object-oriented code. That is a whole lot harder. So I'd say just keep having fun with it. And then just to kind of reiterate a point that we talked about earlier is going out and actually meeting people, be that at a meetup or at a conference or something. Just meet people, and you learn a ton from other people, and you have someone who can kind of mentor and just ask questions. So that's it.
Mark, that is great advice. Thank you so much. Before we let you go, do you want to plug any of your projects, any URLs that people can go find you at, any reasons to reach out to you and ways to reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So I'd love to have people listen on the Elixir Mix podcast. I'm a host on there. You can check out my blog at brainlid.org. And I'm on Twitter, brainlid there as well. And this is just spelled like brain, BRAINLID, like, flip open my head and I'm sharing my thoughts.
Are you open-minded then?
I try to be very open-minded, yes.
Very great. Okay. This has been wonderful. Mark Ericksen, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, this has been Smart Software with Smart Logic, talking about Elixir in production. Join us for our next episode in this series. Thank you so much to everybody who listened, and have a great rest of your day.